Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Bible. Wait, what? I just had to do that. I get to do that 5 times an episode now. 5 times a sit down, not just once.
I will probably laugh 5 times.
5 times
as well.
What? Well, we are discussing with Annaleise this week. We are discussing 2 Samuel chapters 11 to 15, chapter 13 in particular today.
Mm-hmm.
These pretty challenging, confronting, some of, let's just put it not in David's greatest hits category. These are kind of like
not.
scraping the bottom of the barrel of David's life, aren't they, Annaleise?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Not his finest moments.
Not his
for
finest
sure.
moments. So if you haven't listened to the previous episodes, I'd suggest go back and start with chapter 11, the story of David and Bathsheba, and all the sin that David got himself, the mess he got himself into there. Chapter 12 was the confrontation of Nathan the prophet coming to him, and the pronouncement that while he was forgiven, there were going to be consequences for his actions.
Yeah.
And chapter 13, those consequences begin to play out, don't they? And just a little notice for you, we are going to be discussing some fairly sensitive issues in this chapter involving sexual assault. And so just be aware of that. Be kind to yourself if that's triggering. You might want to skip this podcast episode, go to the next one. But just to be aware that that's there, especially if you're listening in the car or listening with littlies around, just be mindful of that. We can't really get away. The scriptures do show this behavior because this is real life. This is what many people do live through.
Yeah.
While it's confronting, I'm glad that it's in there because
absolutely.
It humanizes the Bible. The worst of human behavior gets talked about, and we're going to see some of that tragic stuff today. Abuse, control, power, all that sort of stuff. So it's the worst of humanity, but if you can bear with us, it's worth it. Annaleise has got lots of notes.
I do.
You do. Lots of stuff to talk through. So I'll hand over to you. Take us away.
Awesome. So the start of this chapter it doesn't move away from David entirely because these are his children, it moves on to another consequence from his sin that we talked about in the earlier 2 episodes from this week. That one of those consequences from his sin was that his house and his family would always be afflicted by this violence, and
out of your family calamity will rise.
Yeah, that's the wording.
Some of your family will rebel against you. So it's a calamitous family relationship that comes out of this.
Yeah, exactly. And again, those red flags are waving at the start because one of David's sons is
Absalom?
Yes.
Oh, you talked about?
No, sorry. The other.
Amnon?
Yep, Amnon. There we go.
Amnon.
I know how to say them now.
Well, there's three sons.
Yes.
That all start with A, and they all get themselves into a mess in one form or another. Absalom, Amnon, and later in David's life at the end, Adonijah.
Yes.
All start with A. Any of the 3 sons that start with A, they got themselves into a mess. That's how I remember it. Yep, Amnon.
So we're going to start with Amnon, and it says the wording of this first verse is very interesting. It says, Amnon, son of David, fell in love with Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, son of David.
Yeah.
And it is, I think, purposefully avoiding saying that Amnon is actually Tamar's sister.
Yes. And this version says, now David's son Absalom had a beautiful sister named Tamar.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's just my version.
And Amnon, her half-brother, fell desperately in love with her.
Yeah.
So I think to the authors at the time, it would be very implied that, because David's got multiple wives, and so these are 2 stepbrothers and stepsister.
Yeah.
So for our purposes, it's fair to say the best way to look at it, and they would have known that very upfront. I don't think the scriptures, it's probably just the way it's written there.
It's probably just
the scriptures aren't hiding the fact that this is his half sister. This is his, it's his half sister, not his stepsister, because stepsister implies, it's technically a half sister because they share this. Yeah, they share the same father, parent, so it's a half sister. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and it's just interesting to note as context that half siblings in this time were not able to be married to one another.
No, not in this. Yes, according to Mosaic law, not.
Yeah.
No. Abraham and Sarah were actually half sisters and sister and brother.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, in the narrative, but we're talking back before that sometime. By the time we get to the Mosaic law, the union of half siblings is outlawed. Union of cousins is allowed, and I think it still is according to first cousins is still according to marriage law in Australia, although it's rare. But in this case, it was not allowed. Although we'll see later, Tamar says, "Look, your dad would allow it if you asked him."
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't according to Mosaic law. It wasn't allowed.
Yeah, exactly. And we see that Amnon starts to obsess over his sister and that he wants to take her to bed and that he wants to be with her. And he, just as David did, sent out someone to inquire about her and to find out more and come up with a plot, basically, of how he can get what he wants. And we see
I think the parallels to David are interesting. Sorry, I cut you off there. But the parallels of David are interesting because this is not that different to David being where he shouldn't be, having what he knew he shouldn't have. Amnon knew he couldn't and shouldn't have this relationship, but he allowed it in his own mind to fester to the point where he wanted her. He saw Tamar. It's the same language as David seeing Bathsheba, the woman seeing the tree. He saw Tamar, he wanted her, and we're going to see he takes her, really.
Exactly.
It's an imbalance of power, deep imbalance of power, complete mistrust, misuse of his power that he has. He shouldn't have done this, but I would argue that it's pretty obvious actually, he didn't love her the way he really should. If he had true love for her, he would have loved her enough not to take her. Yeah. He would have respected and valued her. Yeah. He objectifies her.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And he thinks it's love.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem. We see it today, and pornography and all sorts of things. It's objectifying, calling it love, call it whatever you want, but it's purely objectification.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what he's doing to Tamar in the story.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we see in verses 3 to 5 that he gets some really bad advice from a friend.
Jonadab's not a good cousin.
Yeah, no, from his cousin that is ultimately pushing him pretty much to actually go and carry out this sin, and we see that, and it just is a reminder that we need to be surrounding ourselves with like-minded people who hold the same values that we do, that are going to keep us accountable when we start to
wander.
Yeah, when we start to wander, that are going to pull us back in and going to love us enough to be like, no, actually, you're wandering off the path. You need to come back. And
to have people, trusted people in our world who we have, not saying it has to be everybody, but each of us has to have trusted people in our world that we've given them permission to keep us on track. Yeah. And he's doing exactly the opposite here. He's got someone in his world who is going to just, and you're going to see this later with this cousin Jonadab. Jonadab is what you would call an opportunist. Yeah. He sees an opportunity here to benefit from giving Amnon advice on how he can take Tamar. Yeah. Later on in this chapter or the next, we're going to see Jonadab actually use Amnon for his benefit. Yeah. He's an opportunist. He's basically just going to throw whoever it is under the bus in order to get ahead. Yeah. They're not the kind of people you want to be listening to in your life.
No, and it's so common to find those kinds of people.
Yep, sure do.
In society at the moment, everyone's just about them.
I'll tread on whoever I need to get to the top of the rung.
Yeah, it's all about me. That's like what we were talking about before.
Pretty much. You probably see a lot of that in the legal industry. Tread on whoever you need to get to the top of the rung. Is there a lot of that there? Or is it just in Suits that we see that?
No.
No, it's really there.
It still happens. Maybe not quite to the extent of Suits. Don't take everything you see in Suits. Yeah. A lot of fiction in that. But it definitely happends. But even outside the legal industry,
it's just life.
It's just everywhere.
It happens in church life. Yeah. And we need to get the Jonadabs out of our life. Do not listen to the Jonadabs.
No, absolutely
They will lead you down a path of destruction.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And kind of coming back to the point that you briefly touched on before about this idea of love, and we see the word love used in this chapter, but it's actually not referring to love. It's more referring to lust.
That's exactly what it is.
We see in our society as well that the word love has been so far removed from the Bible by society and so far removed from its true meaning that love and lust basically become the same thing.
Yep, that's right.
We see
true love is selfless.
Yeah, exactly.
It's actually, I'm going to respect the other person enough to prefer them over myself. That's not what can I get, but what can I give.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we see it here that Amnon just takes. He doesn't push away and say, I'm going to give. He says, I'm just going to take, which he does. He deceives and he pretends that he is ill, and his sister comes and he ends up not sure if it says exactly, but he basically sexually assaults.
He does.
Yeah.
He actually says, I think it actually says in some versions he rapes her,
Yeah.
which is a confronting word, but that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, he lures her in.
Yeah.
She's doing what she thinks is the right kind thing to do.
Yeah.
She's definitely absolute 100% a victim. Like we said previously, we'd assume that Bathsheba was the victim in the sense that she didn't have a choice as to whether or not she went to the king if she was summoned.
Yeah.
But it's very clear in this situation because we see Tamar's response and she's going in good faith, cooking her half-brother a meal, thinking she's doing something nice for him because he's sick, and he completely abuses her.
Yeah.
Despite her good faith.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's 100% the victim here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we see him deceive in a similar way that we saw David deceive in earlier chapters. They set up this this false reality almost where they're able to just take what they want and they can make it look okay in their head, but it's actually not okay. And we see that it's not okay because as soon as he's committed this sin, we see that he immediately turns to hate, and he hates her, and he tries to send her out and kick her out of the space. And it immediately flips. And if it was actual love, that wouldn't have happened.
No, this was purely taking for himself. And when Tamar pushed back and he just he turned to hate. This is purely selfish, and it's the old thing of what walks in the parents runs in the children. Yeah. And what we see in this story and the next story of Absalom is exactly that. Yeah. Unlike David, who, made a mess of things but still was able to repent, neither of these two sons come to that point where they have, which is tragic, and that's why David's so grieved about it, because he realizes it's his sin that has actually caused so much dysfunction in his own family. But that doesn't excuse Amnon or Absalom from their sin.
No, not at all.
But it's this awareness that we've got to cut stuff out of our life. As a pastor, I have to cut stuff out of my life because I don't want it to affect my kids, but also don't want it to affect my church. Yeah, the people the people that I'm being entrusted with some degree of authority for. And if I refuse to do that, it will flow out and affect others, and that's what David sees here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's actually the next point that I had as well in my notes.
I'm stealing your notes. Go ahead. Say it again in your own words.
That's exactly right. There's a massive ripple-on effect from children modeling their parents' behaviors. So when they see David having multiple marriages, when they see him committing adultery with Bathsheba, where they see him commit murder, of course they're going to follow.
I could do that too.
Yeah, of course they're going to follow in those footsteps and continue on. I think it's in Exodus 25. It says that the inequity of the father is carried on by the children to the third and the fourth generations. So you see it again that these children of David are modeling his behavior. So of course they're going to fall into these habits because they are surrounded by those bad habits as well.
That's right. That's why we need to root that stuff out of our life and be wherever God calls us to be and stay away from the things God says aren't good for us, because it does affect those around us, whether it's our physical children, spiritual children, our spouses, those in our workplace. It will have ripple effects because none of us are an island. Unless you're living on an island. I always say, unless you're living on an island on your own, you're not an island.
No, absolutely not. And you can kind of see that as well, that Amnon did have a sense of feeling guilty immediately because he did kick her out. And she was a reminder of his sin. And that he just wanted...
That's an interesting thought,
Yeah, okay. That he just wanted her gone.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting as well that you can kind of see that. And I guess you can kind of link that back to David in that it was a different situation in that he tried to do something to cover it up. And his guilt over it wasn't necessarily immediate.
Yes, he was trying. This is instant. Okay, that's an interesting thought. I've never thought about Amnon as actually feeling guilty for his sin. I have to think that through. I've always thought about it as there's no sense of guilt. He just continues with his power play, as in, I don't want you anymore. You're not convenient. You can go. I'm angry with you. But he's so confident in his own willfulness that he continues. But yeah, I'm interesting. It's interesting to think about the two perspectives there. Yeah. There's no indication to me that he has any sense that he's even done anything wrong. That's the thing. No,
there is that element, but there's also the kind of that you could see it that
Yeah, it'd be good. This is why it's good to discuss the Bible in person, because I've never thought about it that way, and it's got me wrestling now, thinking, I wonder what was going on in Amnon's head.
Yeah,
because I have always thought Amnon was just he comes so far from repentance here. It's just inconvenient. He's taken her to the point where he's used her.
Yeah,
and now he spat her out.
Yeah,
but and moves on with and leaves her. Leaves her to live out the consequences.
Yeah,
I kind of get the impression Amnon would have just carried on with his life now.
Yeah, I kind of do think that is probably the more kind of like plausible interpretation of it.
We're putting into the text what isn't in the text.
Yeah,
and that's okay to do that. But we don't build doctrine upon that because it's not implied in the text.
Yeah,
so good conversation about that.
Yeah, but you can kind of think that potentially.
Yeah, so you're saying because of his hatred towards her, that's some kind of sense of his awareness that he's done the wrong thing.
Yeah, and that she reminds him of something that he's done wrong, and it's kind of like that out of mind, out of sight.
Yes, okay. That
kind of principle that if he pushes her away far enough, he won't think about it anymore, which is really something that humans do a lot.
We do that. If we can get rid of the reminder.
Just ignore what I've done.
Yep.
Then I can just go on with my day, and I don't have to. It's not gonna.
That's really good, Annaleise.
Yeah.
Yes. Because we do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just, we'll extract ourselves from the situation so we don't get a reminder. We'll do it. Even the whole clean start thing. But really, we haven't dealt with the issue.
No, exactly.
Taking the problem. I see that sometimes people will change churches, but they just do it for a clean start because they've had a relationship issue. Well, they take the same problem with them somewhere else.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there aren't times to change churches. There are. But if the reason is you've had an argument with someone and you think, it's all too hard. That's just picking up and taking your problem with you rather than facing it. That's true. We do that. So good point.
Yeah,
maybe that's what it is. He just wanted her out of his world because she was a reminder of somehow his own greed or his own brokenness or whatever. Yep.
And either way, he's blinded by the sin and is blinded by that lust and hatred towards her, and he just carries on with his actions and carries out like nothing ever happened.
Yep.
Or
definitely
going about with the same behavior.
Yep.
As well, like we see that he just kind of keeps going on.
He does. Yep. Until Tamar runs out of the place, tears her robe as a way of showing grief, puts ashes on her head, and runs into her big brother Absalom.
Yeah.
Absalom's not really pleased to see his baby sister being treated like this, is he?
No, not at all. And we see, jumping down to verse 23, we see that for 2 years, basically, he's kind of been plotting revenge against Amnon and how he can get back at him for what he's done to his sister.
You can imagine the bitterness that has risen and the conniving attitude that over that 2 years of bitterness. And I can identify with that. Like I can identify with if his baby sister has been sexually assaulted. It might even start as a healthy sense of justice.
Yeah.
Because but the thing is, there would have been correct ways to deal with that.
Yeah.
That would have brought Amnon to justice had he approached it well. But that was where it might have started that way. But he allowed the thing to fester and stew.
Yeah, exactly.
And he ends up falling into the same trap as Amnon does, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He ends up. I don't know I can't remember if he has him killed or
he has him killed.
Yeah,
so he has him killed.
Amnon actually dies
at the hand of Absalom.
As a result. So we can see that like that 2 years of plotting and festering on this has only led to further sin.
That's right. It perpetuates.
Yeah.
This is what sin does. It's multi-generational. Sin takes on a life of its own.
Yeah, exactly.
And perpetuates further and further. It started with these few little sins of David's, and now we've got a rape happening here. Now we're going to have another murder happening here. And all the while it wasn't arrested right back at the start. It just perpetuates worse and worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, Absalom could have found a way to bring Amnon to justice, but he thought, no, justice is mine.
Yeah.
Vengeance is mine, says the Lord, but Absalom would have been saying, no, vengeance is mine. I'll repay Amnon for what he's done to my sister. And at no point should we think that Amnon should have got away with it. He shouldn't have done. But there were legal practices in place that should have been approached according to Mosaic law, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And so what he did actually, interestingly enough, was he basically did the whole we talked about on our podcast. He did the whole kinsman vengeance thing. He took it upon it's an honor shame culture.
Yeah.
Where he thought, well, okay, she's shamed my sister. In order to get shame to unshame my family, I need to hold that person accountable. That was the culture of the time.
Yeah.
God, Mosaic law prevented it. The whole cities of refuge thing we talked about in our previous episode was actually around this very thing. Is God was trying to stop and arrest this downward decline where you end up with Romeo and Juliet, the Capulets, and whatever it is, and the hate crimes, just family feuds and all that. Because that's what these cultures do. It's what the human heart does.
Yeah.
It's what happens in this story because they didn't follow God's justice the way God set it up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then Absalom leaves and he tries to run away and to get away with it and to...
Yes, after he's killed Amnon. Yeah,
after he's killed Amnon.
Just so for those that are reading, so after 2 years he calls a party and he says, hey, Dad, why don't you send all the sons? And Dad says, oh, no, don't worry, we don't want to send all the sons. It's too much of a burden for you. He goes, no, shearing season. It's shearing season. Bring them along. And he says, oh, just Amnon. Just send Amnon along. And in the end, Dave sends all the sons along, going to have a big party. And while they're there having the party with all the sons, Amnon is at the table and Absalom says to all his men, when I give you the word, you kill Amnon. And that's how he's murdered. He's murdered at the hand of Absalom. Yeah. And then word gets back to David, Absalom's killed everybody. And no, he hadn't. He killed all the king's sons and he hadn't. He just killed
the one.
Amnon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when, and then meanwhile after that, Absalom, as you said, escapes. Yeah. He gets away for fear of his own life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to say, that's where our friend Jonadab shows up again.
Yeah.
Go back to verse 28. Absalom told his men, wait until Amnon gets drunk. Then at my signal, kill him. Don't be afraid. I'm the one who's given this command. Take courage, do it. So Absalom's signal, they murdered Amnon. Then the other sons jumped up and fled. And as they were on their way back, the report reached David, that Absalom's killed all the king's sons. Not one is left alive. The king got up, tore his robe, and threw himself on the ground. And his advisors also did the same. But then Jonadab, the cousin, shows up and says, no, don't believe that all the king's sons is dead. It was only Amnon. This is what Absalom's been plotting since Amnon raped his sister Tamar. Well, whose idea was that in the first place?
Yeah.
This was Jonadab. This was his idea. No, my lord, the king, your sons aren't all dead. It was only Amnon. Meanwhile, Absalom escaped.
Yeah.
So this is Jonadab. He's just opportunist to the max. This guy.
Absolutely.
He's a minor character in the story, and yet it's quite a confronting, challenging character for all of us, because when are we opportunistic?
Yeah.
When will we leverage someone else's misfortune or someone else's greed for our own benefit?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think he's probably a very easy character to kind of gloss over, skip past, ignore him.
Yep.
But he does have that really important message that
he sure does,
that we need to reflect on ourselves.
Yep. And
think about when we're being like him, when we're taking advantage of people to advance our own desires, which is not what we should be doing.
No, that's exactly right. Not what we should be doing. That's for sure.
Yeah.
What else have you got in your notes?
I don't actually have very much else left on this chapter.
Not much else in this chapter? All right. Let me have a look and see if I've got any thoughts. Nope, that'll do it.
Awesome. Yeah.
Chapter 13, we've got 2 to go. We'll talk to you on tomorrow's episode. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bible. Wait, what? Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And you can also find us on all the socials. Just search The Bible. Wait, what? And to find out more about our church, just search C3 Camden, C3 Picton, or C3 Thirroul on the web or on the socials. Thanks for being with us today, and we look forward to talking to you on the next episode of The Bible. Wait, what?